Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Ham Radio Basics Live, Season 4, Episode 8, Ham Radio News and Updates, February 18th, 2026. The year's already starting to fly by. Cooley, welcome. Good to see you this afternoon, my friend. Hope everybody's doing well. For those of you that may watch me on X or on Twitter, StreamYard reported that there's been an issue. Hey, James, welcome. Thanks for stopping by today. That there's an issue watching a live stream feed right now. So if you want to, you gotta watch us on YouTube. That's just kind of they sent me a notice on that just a few minutes before the show started. So and there's really not a whole lot I can do about that. But hope you guys did well. If any of you were at Hamcation, just say hey down in the chat and let me know if you guys were there. Didn't get to go. Last weekend was a very busy weekend. Valerie and her sister went to go see her mother. I had a lot of things to do around the house, and spun my wheels on some technology for about 4 or 5 hours last Saturday, which was a real, yeah, that's a whole episode in and of itself, to say the least, if not less. So, but doing well. I heard that Hamcation was well received. People really enjoyed themselves, had a great time. Weather was good here. It's been mostly in the 70s this week. But then this week coming up on Monday and Tuesday, we're going to go down to 35 again. I was telling my wife, I said, I think I'm going to sue Florida for breach of contract. She said, why is that? I said, I was promised sunshine. Well, I got the most beautiful woman in the world, but Florida's trying to do its best impression of winter. And, Florida, you've done a great job. We know you can have winter here. We know there's snow flurries up in the panhandle. Okay. We get it. We understand it. Great job. You can cut it out now. So, hey, Ted, thanks for stopping by today. Appreciate that. So, but all in all, I don't know if I'm going to get to any ham radio shows this year. Definitely not going to Hamvention in Dayton. Love to do that. So I think we have plans for our granddaughter's birthday. It's in July. I think we're going to get up there for that. And then in in September, no, it's October. I'm sorry. I have my 50th reunion in high school in November. I'm not going to miss that. I took Valerie to the 40th, and wow, one of the best times ever. Valerie was she was the hit of the show that whole night. She wore this dress with a poofy skirt on it. Everybody, just all my female friends from high school, saying, wow, that was great. Where did she get it? I think she got it at Dress Barn of all places. So, but no, we're looking forward to that. It was great to reconnect with a lot of my friends from high school. It's great. Unfortunately, several have passed since the last reunion. So, that's always a real bummer there, but looking forward to seeing those who we can see. So, okay. All right. Got a couple of, AI can be a pain in the butt, or it can really be a help. And I've decided, I said, you know what? I'm going to use it to have it be a help. And today, the PowerPoint presentations were put together by ChatGPT for me. So we're going to go to the first one right now here, which I want to do this, and I think I'm going to do this from now on. There's a weekly news update, and what I've done is I found how to get this and glean this off of ChatGPT to get me relevant news. Like, for example, when it started out, it wanted to talk about Winter Field Day. Well, Winter Field Day was like almost a month ago, and that's old news. And I wanted to get current news. So, that's where we're going with that. But Hamcation 2026, it was held February 13th and 15th in Orlando, one of the largest amateur radio conventions in North America. It's probably number 2. Attracted thousands of operators, vendors, and clubs. They do publish their statistics probably about 3 or 4 weeks. So as soon as I get those, I've been trying to keep a track, and the number has actually been going up a little bit, believe it or not, each year. Not significantly, but maybe 2, 3, 4, 500. So that's a good thing. It's always good to see that, and it's always good to see more people come there. And like I said, for me, I've been there, and I've been to Dayton, and not that I don't like Dayton, but Dayton's very spread out. There's a lot of buildings there, which is good, which means you have a lot of room, but it's also a lot of walking. And it's also, I like the compactness of it. and you have to realize when you have the compactness of it, you also have to deal with, unfortunately, being in crowded spaces. That can get real dicey at times. So, but all in all, it's a Hamcation is fantastic here. And this year in 2026, there was a strong emphasis on digital modes and SDR technology. And they also, emergency communications and preparedness were major themes. And of course, always there were high engagement at vendor booths and flea markets. Like I said, one of the things, a lot of people who've been to ham radio, who are YouTubers and really, know it insides out, outsides, backwards and forwards. Number one, hopefully you can meet some of the YouTubers there, like Jason or Josh or Mike K at MRD, or I don't know if Sully Walt was there, but ones that you talk to and connect with on a regular basis to engage with them. That's kind of a good thing. And the other thing are people that you get to know in the industry, like John Kruk from Yaesu and our good friend Ray Novak from ICOM. Both of them are so easy to talk to. Well, I know with John, I've engaged him on chat on Facebook, and he's been great, but not in person. But Ray in person is absolutely fantastic. And it's always a line. A line always queues up to go to talk to him there. Crowded, warm places in the humidity. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely. But no, it's always good to talk to them, and hopefully you can try to glean a little bit of insight as to what's going on. I always try to ask a question and try to get some information out of both of them, but they're pretty good about it. I mean, that's what they do for a living. So they kind of got that down pat. So, youth licensing and outreach programs were featured prominently. I mean, there's a real push to get more young people involved with ham radio. And I know our good friends, James, with Ham Radio Prep are trying to do that. And I think it's, they have a youth movement there themselves. James is relatively young, and, Jim's and he's retired, but, he's probably one of the older people that James has working for him. And, it really, it's going to be the lifeblood of getting people in here. I mean, when you go, one of the clubs that I used to go to, I was the youngest person there, and I'm 67 years old. So go figure that one. All right. Go figure that. So, all right. But, educational forums covered HF, satellites, digital, and contesting. And that's a thing I think a lot of people, I don't want to say miss out on, but if you go there and if you're going to be there, say like for 3 days, let's say you get an RV or you got a hotel and you're staying there for 3 days, you can dedicate one of those days to doing some of the educational forums there and to learn quite a bit. John Kruk's one of the speakers for Yaesu. How much better can it get than that? I can listen to John for hours. I've listened to him, some of his shows that he's done with Jason. It's just absolutely fantastic. And it's a great way to start off the year for ham radio. It really set a great tone. It's a very positive vibe, very positive, upbeat. So, and I know a lot of people really had a great time there. So, all right. Major ham radio news this week. Ham clock end of life transition planning continues. And we're going to talk about that here. I have a whole PowerPoint deck up for that. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. I know we talked about it last week, but I kind of want to bring that up again. Yeah, James. Yeah. 54. Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like they just brought you home from the hospital. Okay. Open source tools gaining traction across the hobby. That seems to be the name of the game right now. Ham radio is I don't know who said it. I don't know if it was T.O. or he was quoting somebody, but he said ham radio is the hobby of 1,000 hobbies. And it really is. There's so much diversification that you can get with this, and it's absolutely wonderful, and it's great. And I think it's fantastic. And then, we're seeing a lot more collaboration amongst clubs and developers, which is fantastic. That's really needed to take place. I know one of the better clubs here in Florida, I think it's called Gold Coast, and it's down toward Fort Lauderdale, over on the East Coast area. They're very active. I see them a lot out on Instagram, and shout outs to you guys if you're watching. But you guys, they do a fantastic job. They really get a lot of their community involved with that. I wish I was in the area because I think they have one of the better clubs that I've seen. They really have a lot of active participation there. Solar conditions remain favorable for HF operations, and it did. It was pretty good. It was pretty good last week. I keep tabs on that. Improved openings on 10 meters, 12 meters, and 15 meters were reported. Yeah, that's always a good thing, and that's why it's so important. Ham clock. A lot of people poo-poo ham clock and say, yeah, they don't pay a lot of attention to it. Well, you know what? It has all the information you need to go out there. And, whether or not you have success on the radio that day, a lot of times depends on what the information that's available. There may be days you just want to go ahead and skip because of what you see out there, like on ham clock and the information, with solar conditions out there and space weather alerts. You need to pay attention to that information. And also, how different bands are. And you can see right here, 10 meter, 12 and 15 were improving. So that's always a good thing. And that's why, I strongly suggest that you do something like that. I really do. So ARRL continues modernization and outreach initiatives. I say what you will, ARRL, we have something in place. Okay. On the drone side of things, we had nothing in place, and look what happened to us. We're facing a lot of turmoil, and we really don't know what's going on right there. But it's good that they're finally addressing some things that needing modernization and making some more outreach initiatives, because they've really unfortunately have not had a good reputation, and they really kind of need to shake things up and change things there. And I hope that happens for the sake of our hobby, because we need a good, strong organization to help represent us and help another, first and foremost, to protect our bands. And I think that's a big thing here. Yeah, James. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. See, that's a great place, James. That is absolutely great. Thank you for posting that link there. License exam pool updates remain in effect. They've been changing some of the questions in the license exam pools. So you may want to pay attention to that if you're, still looking to be taking, your tests, and, look at that closely to see what's been updated. And then emergency communications readiness remains a priority. That's always a good thing. And that's always one of the things I think one of the things that a lot of us are very proud of is that when an emergency hits, that's where ham radio becomes very active. And that is the whole reason why I got into ham radio in the first place when I moved down to Florida, because I realized, if cell phone towers go on, how do I talk to my loved ones, and how do I get in touch with them? And I found out, and I quickly became a ham and quickly, passed all 3 of my license exams. So, all right, digital modes continue to expand rapidly, and that's a great thing. And again, it's this hobby of 1,000 hobbies. Some people don't want to do it, and that's fine. You want to do CW, you want to do POTA, you want to do SOTA, DX, whatever to your heart's content. That's your option, and that's your choice. Portable and field style operations remain popular, of course. Down in Florida, really doesn't kind of curtail a whole lot, except when we got some cold weather like we have coming up. But it's still nice to be able to go outside and to be able to make some contacts, to do some POTA, and also the whole idea of, the winter field day is, looking at alternate power sources when you're out for extended periods of time. And it really helps prepare you out in the field. Growing interest in emergency communications training, and yes, that's a very real thing, and they need people to train people. I mean, that's a good problem to have right now. I've been paying some attention to that. Spring Ham Fest and public outreach events approaching. Of course, we have Hamvention coming up in May, and it'll be here before you know it. New radios and accessories expected later in 2026. That's one thing about the life cycle of when we start to see new products. They get approved, but it seems that, once they get approved, it's going to be several months before we actually get them in hand. So you kind of have to be patient with things like that. So community-driven innovation remains strong, and that's a good thing. Hearing a lot from you, hearing a lot from the community, and that's why I think it's great to be active and involved in social media, especially X, and some great Facebook groups. Like Ham Radio Operators is one of the best ones. There's over 120,000 members on there. They are so good. They weed out the bad people, it's been since day one there, and I've told the admins, and they've appreciated it. That they run a great group there. Hamradio remains active and evolving. Hamcation 2026 highlighted innovation and growth. Staying informed helps operators stay effective. All right, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at ham clock, and I think it's important enough that I wanted to prepare this slide deck because there's a lot of misinformation going on right now since Elwood Downey unfortunately passed away, and I want to clear things up because I'm a member of one of the largest groups on ham clock out there, and a lot of times there's some conflicting information, and I want to make sure that you guys have the latest out there. So let's take a look at this here. Now, just a primer here. What is ham clock? Ham clock's a popular real-time information display used by amateur radio operators worldwide. It provides propagation data, gray line mapping, solar conditions, TX cluster data, and time location information. Ham clock is widely used on Raspberry Pi systems, desktops, and dedicated shack displays. Ham clock was created and maintained by Elwood Downey, call sign WB00EW. Elwood personally maintained both the software and back-end data servers. He passed away in January 2026, leaving the future of ham clock uncertain. And we'll move on to the next slide here. All right. No new official development or feature updates have been released since January 2026. The ham clock website was updated with an end-of-life notice, and that unfortunately Elwood unfortunately took his own life. It's very sad and very tragic. Version 4.2.2 is the final official release. Ham clock relies heavily on a centralized back-end server for live data. The server supplies solar data, propagation indices, weather, and DX information. The server was maintained solely by Elwood Downey. The original ham clock back-end server is scheduled to shut down in June of 2026. After shutdown, live data feeds will stop. Ham clock displays may still run, but will lose real-time functionality. And there's been some point of contention regarding this. They're saying it's still going to go. It's not going to shut down. There's a lot of talk, back and forth discussion on this. Join one of the larger ham clock groups. If you look on my timeline, you'll see the one that I've joined, and I think they're the best ones. The admins try to keep everything up to date and the information up to date there because it's really critical. It's very important that you have correct information about this because it really makes a difference for all of us here. Until the server shut down, most ham clock installations continue to operate normally, and they will. There won't be any change regarding that. Static display elements and cache data may continue temporarily. Accuracy and freshness of data may gradually degrade. Nobody there to maintain the server. That could be problematic here. The amateur radio community quickly began discussing preservation options. Developers and hobbyists recognized the importance of ham clock to the hobby. Multiple independent projects emerged to replace or preserve functionality. Let's move to the next one here. Open Ham Clock is an open source spiritual successor to Ham Clock, designed to run on PCs, Linux systems, and Raspberry Pi. Actively developed with modern tools and community contributions. Replicate the core ham clock experience. Remove reliance on a single private backend server, which I think they should have done that a long time ago. Ensure long-term sustainability through open source development. And again, when it's open source, it makes a big difference. Oh, that's good. Thank you. Thank you for posting that. I appreciate that. A separate project aims to recreate ham clock's backend services, uses public data sources such as NOAA, PSK Reporter, and space weather feeds. That's probably that link that James posted there. Designed to support both new dashboards and legacy ham clock style clients. I hope that effort does work here. Some projects allow users to host their own backend servers. This removes single point of failure risks, more technically complex, but highly resilient, And again, it's nice that the community is working on some solutions here regarding this. Several web dashboards provide similar propagation and DX data. Examples include DXLook and other browser-based tools. These tools do not fully replace ham clock, but cover core needs. And again, understand, I've seen some of the other ones and they're good, but they don't have all the information that you have available on Ham Clock. Some developers have forked the original Ham Clock code. These forks may improve compatibility or extend lifespan. Most still depend on replacement backend data services. Original Ham Clock installations will lose live data feeds. Displays may show blank or outdated information. Community run replacements are expected to fill the gap. And again, they're projecting on, I think, this information that was left behind by Elwood regarding this, and people don't know, 100% whether or not that server is actually going to shut down. Continue using Ham Clock while it remains functional. Monitor the community projects such as Open Ham Clock, and prepare to transition before the back-end shutdown. And I think that's important. If, as time goes on, prepare yourself to transition to another form of Ham Clock. You may need to do that based on what transpires here. Again, from all the talk and discussion I've seen, people aren't sure that this is going to shut down in June. So stay tuned for that, and definitely join that group. You're going to be your best source of information going forward. Ham Clock, as originally designed, is at end of life. Its influence is driving new open source innovation. Community-driven tools are likely to surpass original capabilities. Ham Clock remains usable in the short term, which is good. Major changes are coming due to the back-end shutdown. The amateur radio community is actively preserving its legacy. Okay, that's it. That's what I have for all that. But I think it was important to go over this again because there's been a lot of talk, a lot of discussion, and a lot of people that aren't really clear on what's going on with that. And I know a lot of people base a lot of what they do on using Ham Clock, on getting that information from there. Whether or not, are they going to go out for the day and do POTA? Is the weather decent enough to do that? Are the band conditions good enough to do something like that? What bands you're going to use for the day, everything. I mean, DX clusters, just a whole host of information is out there and available. And it's such a valuable tool. And a lot of people have realized that, and they're stepping in. I can tell you this, something's going to be done. It may not look exactly the same as the original Ham Clock, but I think as long as we can get the same information up there and be able to use that information, that's the key. I think that's really important that we remember that. So, like I said, the best thing, go to the larger, it's a lot, I'll post a link in my Facebook group for the group that I recommend, and also out on X and out on Instagram. So I think you guys need to know which one to follow. I think that's really, really important. So want to thank you guys for stopping by today. James, Cooley, Dr. Ted, K5, thank you guys so much. As always, guys, remember, it's a great day to make a QSO. 7 3s, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.